Order, please. We begin the daily routine. Presenting reading petitions. Presenting reports of committees. Table reports, regulations, and other papers. The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to table the annual report for 2002 for the Nova Scotia Gaming Foundation.
Order is tabled. Statements by ministers. Government notice of motion. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce an act respecting certain financial measures.
The Honourable Minister of Finance begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting Certain Financial Measures.
Give those the other parties. Do it. Thanks.
Bill 36, entitled An Act Respecting Certain Financial Measures.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to authorize the town of Hansport to make a grant to the Hansport Memorial Community Centre, and I do so as a private member.
The Honourable Member begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to authorize the town of Hansport to make a grant to the Hansport Memorial Community Centre.
Bill 37, entitled An Act to authorize the town of Hansport to make a grant to the Hansport Memorial Community Centre.
Order this bill be read a second time at a future date. Notice of motion. Orders of the day. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that you do now leave the chair in the House resolved to committee of the whole House on supply.
Motion is carried.
I would like to recognize the Government House Leader.
Chairman, would you please call the estimates of the Minister of Education?
Call the estimates for the Department of Education. And we're just going to pause for a second while the Minister takes his seat and staff are seated. And in saying that, we'll be recognizing the NDP caucus with 17 minutes in turn. And I believe that'll be the member from Timberley Prospect. Thank you. I would recognize the member from Timberley Prospect. Member, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to this few moments that I have again this morning with the Minister of Education. Welcome the Education Minister and the staff who are with him this morning. I'd like to continue the conversation which we were having when we adjourned last. And I want to draw the Minister's attention, and I actually believe it's a topic that the Minister and I agree on. And as two teachers from a previous career, I'd like to turn to the topic of what makes an effective school. In fact, I do know that the Nova Scotia Teachers Union has issued an invitation, I hope to all members, to me as the critic for the NDP, to an event on May the 8th at the Holiday Inn and Wise Road, at which time we'll be looking at what makes an effective school. Now, Mr. Minister, we're all wanting in all of our communities to have effective schools, to have schools that have a positive PR, to have schools that the kids look forward to going to have schools that the parents are saying the community that we are fortunate enough to live in has a good school. It's environmentally safe, it's got accountable teachers, it is a good school. Now, recently there was the much ballyhooed publication of the Ames Group about ranking of schools. Mr. Minister, do you see any productive use of ranking schools in this province?
Thank you for the question, and I direct that to the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the honourable member from Kimberley Prospect for his question and his obvious concern about effective schools. The concept of ranking schools is one that we need as a society, I believe, to weigh very, very carefully where we're going when we speak about doing that. There are a number of factors that need to be taken into consideration, and one of them is the fact that in our province, for the most part, we don't have a choice with respect to where our students attend school. We have a publicly funded school system, and there is only the one public school in most of our communities, which is available to the students. So when you get into the concept of a ranking, you're saying that somebody is number one, and you're saying that somebody is last when you're doing that, and that's not a very effective indicator at best, because of all of the components, some of which the honourable member referenced, that go into making an effective school. But the greatest concern is the fact that there isn't an alternative. We believe that the emphasis should be placed on schools being able to do an effective evaluation of their own performance relative to objectives, agreed upon objectives, that reflect first of all, the interests of the curriculum of the Department of Education, but also the interests of the community in which the school is located. And we believe that we should be working toward creating an effective evaluation of schools so that they can measure their own performance with respect to achieving stated objectives that they have for themselves. And I believe that that approach would be far more constructive than doing a ranking. The ranking has become a recent phenomenon within this country, I believe, because of the high-profile ranking that Maclean's gets now as a result of the ranking of the universities. There's a fundamental difference. Well, this is not my purpose today to get onto that, but temporarily, yes, and you were first for some period of time, and no doubt you'll work very hard at trying to replace St. FX as being number one, and we will work very hard at making sure that you don't succeed for some time. But that's not my point today. My point is, as you have indicated, there are choices for students when it comes to universities, and students can look right across the country and decide upon a university that has strengths with respect to a particular discipline that a student may be interested in, a university that has unique characteristics relative to the student population, whether they want to be involved with a large university with a large student population, or whether they want to be in a smaller area. They have the choice of whether they want to be in a major metro center within the country or something rural. They obviously have the opportunity of evaluating which school would give them the best opportunity for postgraduate work. But those are not issues when it comes to the public schools. So we believe that we need to give to the public schools the capacity to be able to focus on their own performance relative to their objectives within the community, as well as the objectives set out by the Department of Education for those schools.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Timberlea Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for that reply, because I share the same concerns when it comes to ranking public schools, particularly when we look at the factors of size was not involved. And I think it's truly unfair to rank some of the big high schools in particular against some of the smaller ones. But in addition, there are other concerns, and I want this for the record, and I do hope that the Ames group makes or that the Nova Scotia Teachers Union makes it the opportunity available to the Ames group to go to this session on what makes an effective school on May 8th over at the Holiday Inn in Dartmouth. I think they would have much to learn from. I think also, and I've said it again, and I say it to the member from Truro Bible Hill, I'm on record and I'm proud to say that when I took kids around this province to schools, when we walked into Cobequid Education Center in Truro, we knew we were in one of the top ranked schools in our opinion. But when an Ames group says, what difference does it make if you've never been in the gymnasium of the school? I think anybody who's ever visited the home of the Cougars knows what we're talking about. If they've ever been to one of their football games, if they've ever seen their drama productions, that's what we aim for in this province. And that's why it would be very important for this group in future to look at other factors when it comes to making rankings of schools and high schools across this province. I want to turn to a topic that concerns me, Mr. Minister, and it's pilot projects. Pilot projects, and how many of them you have. But there is one pilot project I've got to get out of the way. And I know I've just made eye contact with the Deputy Minister of Education. And I don't mean to be, well, yes, I do mean to be a little sarcastic. I'm going to talk about a line item that I do not find there. This is a pilot project when we have to take Cougar helicopters or we have to take DNR helicopters. Where are the monies allocated for the department's use of helicopters, in particular the Deputy Minister's trips around the province? I don't see that in any of the education items.
I would like to direct that question to the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I guess it was only a matter of time when I would expect the honourable member to get to this topic. You will not find a specific line in the budget relative to types of travel, but rather you will find it under expenses of the Deputy Minister's office or of the building. What do we call it? Facilities branch office, and there are times, Mr. Chairman, when time efficiency is significant relative to being able to address a number of issues. For instance, on one occasion when a Department of Natural Resources helicopter was used, the Deputy Minister was able to visit 4 schools and deal with 4 separate capital issues relative to those schools in the province. And he was able to do it in a portion of a single day. And in that day, he was in his office in the morning, and he was in his office at the end of the day. But in addition, he also was able to visit those 4 facilities at various places in the province. And that, we believe, is an efficient use of time, rather than having mileage be paid, having additional meals be paid, overnight accommodation, time away from the office. So there is a balance, and when it is appropriate to be efficient with respect to travel, we choose to be efficient. When it is appropriate to use a ground mode of transport, we use a ground mode of transport. But the time has value, and we measure carefully the value of that time in making decisions relative to transportation.
Thank you, Minister, for that answer. I'd like to recognize the member from Timberley Prospect.
Well, trying to make some sense out of travel when it comes to deputy ministers is a concern. It's a comparative comment. I think it's one that's worthwhile. I know that this deputy minister conscientiously makes his way from one issue to another around this province. But I want to make it clear that the deputy minister has $18,348.25, according to page 43 of the supplement. And I would assume that that travel that's included there is strictly by motor vehicle. If that's not the case, could you clarify that for me? And I would like to know what portion of that $18,000 can be attributed to the use of the helicopter way of traveling around the province. That's page 43 of the supplementary accounts.
Thank you for the question. I'd like to recognize the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. These are all items for which the Deputy Minister has been reimbursed for travel to various associations or groups which we belong to by virtue of our participation in national associations throughout the country. And I can illustrate for a number of these, Mr. Chairman, and would be, for instance, on April 27th to May 2nd of 2002, there is the Canadian Association for the Practical Study of Law in Education Conference. And that's not to that one because it was held in Vancouver. It would have required several refuelings along the way. That, I presume, was by one of our national carriers, which at that time was probably only one. So to travel to Vancouver, you can appreciate with the prices that we're forced to pay to Air Canada, that was a significant amount of money, $1,416. But that was considerably more efficient than driving to Vancouver, or indeed than taking the train to Vancouver, which are the only, well, perhaps we could have strapped the helicopter on the flatbed of a train and made the trip if that were the preferred method of transport, but it was not deemed appropriate at that time. There is the Halifax, Ottawa, Toronto, for a meeting with the Canadian Heritage in Ottawa and participating in meetings in Toronto to discuss student assistance, a topic which we hear considerable about from members of the committee. And that conference and the travel there was an amount of $1,100. There is a trip to the Atlantic Veterinary College in PEI relative to its operations, and financial system analysis meeting that was held in Fredericton. That was an amount of $600. there is the provincial territorial meeting to discuss online learning issues and initiatives, and that is an important topic when it comes to alternatives relative to declining student population. So we need to be in the forefront of that. And the cost of attending that was an amount, or the travel cost was $1,725. And there is a meeting with the New Brunswick Deputy Minister of Education in Fredericton, and that was $525. There's a meeting in Moncton. There's the Atlantic Provinces Education Foundation meeting, $400. That was in August. And they are trips of that nature, Mr. Chairman, and they're expenses for which the Deputy Minister was reimbursed.
Thank you, Minister. Time has expired for the NDP caucus, and I would like to recognize the Liberal caucus, and the member from Glace Bay has the floor, time being 9:26, 1 hour in turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I read with great interest in the Halifax Herald recently that there was at the Legislature's Public Accounts Committee meeting the other day a rather serious accusation that was made during that meeting. One that indeed that the whole process of a priority list for schools to be replaced or renovated was indeed, as it was quoted in the article, the process of compiling that list is prone to politics, which is, I guess, not a shocking allegation, but an accusation or an allegation nonetheless. So I'd like to take this opportunity this morning to give the minister a chance before this House to clear the air, so to speak, and to convince us once and for all that indeed perhaps politics doesn't play a part in compiling such a list. And I intend to ask him over the next little while a series of questions. Hopefully that will be answered in detail and in full concerning the priority list of schools to replace or to renovate. It's a secret list, Mr. Chair, right now. Only a few people, I guess, have access to it. And I'm rather worried, as the critics involved the other day in the Legislature's Public Accounts Committee meeting were worried as well, that perhaps this list will be used for political purposes because of the fact that we seem to be coming very close to the date for an election in this province. Now, as you know, Mr. Chair, this government, and in particular the Education Department, the minister before him, have had close to 4 years now to deal with school construction, school maintenance. That's been quite a while to take care of things, to compile a list. They've had the list supplied to them by the various school boards from across the province. They've had a chance to look at it, but lo and behold, we find ourselves perhaps just weeks away from the call of an election, and still no news from this list. No, I don't know any more than anybody else would know about the call of an election, but I've been following it quite closely, Mr. Chair, and I think that perhaps we could all aim in the same direction, that one is coming, probably sooner than later. But as I said, in seriousness, in all seriousness, I'd like to know from the minister that there, and we can go into the estimates themselves, but I think the minister will explain that he has said there are going to be schools built. There are going to be new schools built in this province. And I'd like to hear from the minister exactly how that list was compiled, where that list stands right now. I would dearly love for the minister to tell me who's on that list and why they're on that list. And even if he would table it before this committee, I'd be pleased as punch, Mr. Chair. I'm not naive enough to think that that's actually going to happen, but I would be very pleased to have it happen. But I'd like to hear from the minister as to that list. The province's 7 regional school boards have asked, I know they've asked, Mr. Minister, for a number of schools which are probably impossible for you to find all of the money to build all of those schools. But I know that you have, I'm speculating that you have a priority list. I'd like to know about it, and I'd like to know what went into the compilation of that list.
I'd like to recognize the Minister of Education. The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the honourable member for the question. The lists of schools which are considered for either replacement or for additions and alterations is a list which is which reflects the priorities of school boards, and the priorities of the school boards have been brought forward and presented to the School Capital Construction Committee, and that committee is represented by school boards, represented by officials from the Department of Education and Transportation of Public Works. And they do a detailed analysis of the priorities of all of the school boards, and they compiled a list. That list was brought forward in 2002. The Cabinet wanted further analysis of that list to be done, and further analysis did take place. And as a result of that analysis, the whole program is currently before Cabinet and is receiving the consideration of Cabinet, and our Cabinet's decision relative to the construction program for new schools and additions and alterations will be made known following Cabinet's decision, which will take place in the near future.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get back to a question concerning specifically when you expect the announcements to be made, Mr. Minister. But first, I'd like to know, you've announced over the past couple of months that you're going to announce 10 new schools for the province. Is that correct, the number 10?
The Minister of Education. The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The number 10 was prefaced with the words, I believe, about, because I was asked that I believe by a member of the press following an announcement in Hammonds Plains, and it was when I say about, there are in the vicinity of 10 schools under consideration. Hammonds Plains obviously was a school which originally had been under consideration. It was announced on that particular day. It was announced because the Halifax District School Board requested us to indicate our intentions with respect to that school, because they had to make decisions relative to zoning, and those decisions had to take place in order for them to plan for the coming school year. So we did our best to accommodate them and brought forward that school on that occasion. And as I indicated, when asked the question as to how many other schools are being considered, I believe I used the word about, or a word that would give that meaning. That is an approximation of 10. And the precise number, of course, will be made known when Cabinet has made its final decision with respect to the program.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what the Minister is telling us is that it's not necessarily 10. Could be 8, could be 9, could be 7, could be 7.5, could be 8.5. So you have no idea right now the exact number of new schools that are going to be built in this province. Is that correct?
I'd like to direct that question to the Minister of Education.
When Cabinet has made its decision, Mr. Chairman, we will know precisely how many schools there will be, and I don't anticipate there being any half schools.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I said, right now the minister has no idea how many new schools are going to be built in this province, although he has been quoted as saying you are going to announce 10 new schools.
Ask him how many.
But now you're saying you don't know how many are going to be built. So what I'd like to ask the minister then, Mr. Chair, is that if he's saying that if he's not sure of how many new schools are going to be built, then what is being done with that list right now? And in particular, why now? Why are you announcing new schools now that the construction actually won't start on those new schools until 3 years down the road? Why all of a sudden do you make this batch of announcements, Mr. Minister, and speculate on whether it's going to be 8 new schools or 10 new schools, and you announce them, and the question remains where they're going to be built, but you make the announcements leading up to schools that actually will not be, the construction will not start, in most cases I would suggest, until some 3 years down the road. Why? What's your reasoning behind that, Mr. Minister, please?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's an interesting question that's asked by the honourable member. He wasn't here prior to 1999, but the honourable member no doubt is aware that in 1999, prior to the election, the then government of the day announced 17 school projects, one of which was not intended to be finished until 2005. And that list of 17 schools did not have attached to it a single dollar of financing to suggest that the financing would be in place relative to how those schools were going to be built. And what I can assure the honourable member of is this, that when we announce the schools, and we will announce them because that is the time that we are ready, we will announce them so that school boards will be able to plan their future, and we're in a position now to announce them because we are reaching the conclusion of a schedule of school buildings that's been underway for since 1999, and I believe we have completed 9. We've completed 9 schools. We have 5 under construction, and all of them are financed under the tangible capital assets program. And when we announce, and it is now appropriate because we're reaching the next phase of school capital construction, we will do so with the numbers identified, and you will, and all people of the province will understand how those schools will be financed and paid for.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm not quite sure. Well, no, I am sure where the minister was headed with that question, but it didn't answer, or that answer, it didn't answer what I was asking. What I asked the minister is indeed why now? Why wait until now? And the fact of the matter is, because for almost 4 years, this government has done absolutely nothing in terms of school construction and maintenance. And now all of a sudden we find ourselves about a month or so away from an election, and lo and behold, you're pulling out the announcements. I wanted to know, Mr. Minister, if indeed that list contains perhaps a new school for Barrington, and perhaps if a new school for Dominion. Are they included in the consideration for that list, Mr. Minister?
I would like to direct that question to the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will repeat for the honourable member the answer that perhaps he didn't. He did well. I'll repeat it anyway because you don't seem to understand the significance of it. We received and inherited a list of 17 schools that were committed by the previous government prior to the 1999 election. They were schools that had no dollars attached to them, no way of knowing how they were going to be financed. And what we have done, Mr. Chairman, is we have taken the bulk of that list and we built those schools or took action relative to the schools that were on that list. And we are now nearing the completion of that list, and therefore it is appropriate for us to move to another phase. And the phase that we're now moving to is a phase where when we announce the schools, and the honourable member is patient, he will hear that announcement when it is made. And the important thing is that unlike the list that was identified by the previous government in 1999 that had no dollars attached to it, the list that we will bring forward will have dollars attached, and the method of financing will be clear to all Nova Scotians. And I might say, Mr. Chairman, that if the program that is being suggested by the leader of his party were ever implemented, there would not be the capacity to get the money to build those schools, because he has clearly stated that that would not be part of their program if they were to be elected, unless, of course, his stated tax increase was going to be sufficiently large to pay for those schools. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would recognize the member from Glace Bay, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. If the member from Yarmouth would like to add something more than oops, I'd be welcome to give him my time.
As intelligent as he gets.
But, probably as about as an intelligent a comment as I can expect from him, Mr. Chair.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. The member from Glace Bay has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, what the minister is saying, and what the minister has stated before this committee, is that there is no plan. There is no plan whatsoever. Haven't had a plan since they've been here for school construction. Now, I don't want look, Mr. Chair, if the minister wants to deal with pure numbers, then I guess we can go back and say, how many schools have you built? How many schools has your government built, Mr. Minister? Would it be in the 30s? Would the member for Yarmouth like the floor, Mr. Chair? Would you like the floor? Because it would be one of the few times he's ever spoken in this chamber, if he'd like it right now, Mr. Chair. I didn't think so, Mr.
Order.
Chair.
Order, please. 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 I will ask, as chairman, I will ask for order in the House. Order, please. Order, please. I remind the House that this is the Committee on Estimates, and the member from Glace Bay has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, what I would like to know from the minister now, I asked if perhaps Barrington High School, which is a high school, which is a sick school right now that is making kids sick, and was identified as one of a priority, and Dominion School, which is a school which suffered from subsidence and has sunk into the ground. It's no longer used. And that has been identified to the minister from the school board, the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board. They've identified to the minister that they would like to have a new school for the Dominion area. So if he can assure the people of Barrington and area, or the people of Dominion and area, if indeed one or both of those schools is going to be included on a priority list. And I've asked the minister if that priority list comes from the school boards and they've identified the schools that should be put on there as a priority. I've asked the minister, how do they determine what the priority is? Or is it determined whether or not you're a Tory riding? Is that how you determine priorities as to where the schools are going to be built? So those couple of questions should be fairly easy for the minister to answer, Mr. Chair.
Before I recognize the Minister of Education, I would like to tell the host that it's very noisy in here and it's hard for the chair to hear the questions and answers, and I would ask everyone to keep order while we're doing the estimates. The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What I can assure the honourable member is that the students in the school served by the schools to which he refers will be provided with a good, safe surrounding in which they will receive their education, and that is, of course, our first priority. With respect to the two locations, the honourable member knows that the students who were originally housed in the MacDonald School are now being served very well in the Breton Education Centre. The honourable member knows that those students, there are plans in place for those students to be looked after in the coming year. And the honourable member knows what it is that I said when I met with the Cape Breton District School Board, that we would not be, because of the overcapacity that exists in and around the area of Dominion, would not be building a new school. We did, however, indicate that we are prepared to discuss, and we not just discuss, but we indicated that we are prepared to upgrade the facilities for the elementary school in that area. And of course, we would engage discussion with the school board with respect to other improvements that we may be able to make relative to that particular situation. In the other location, Barrington, I can let the honourable member know that the decision with respect to that facility will very much depend upon the analysis that comes forward as a result of the work of doctors who are currently evaluating the situation. And we, next week, I believe, are meeting with representatives from that community, and we will be providing them with an update with respect to where we are at that time. And I can tell the honourable member that our first priority, of course, will be to ensure that the students of that area have a safe, secure environment in which to receive their education. Now, the honourable member also made reference to schools that we are going to build. And I can tell the honourable member that these are the programs that have been followed by this particular government. There were 16 schools of the list of 17 that came forward, plus an additional 3 that were built by this government. And they are schools that are owned by the people of this province. They are schools where the issue of access and after-school use of the buildings is open to the community under the control of the school board. And there are no restrictions with respect to people wanting to gain access to those schools as long as they meet the criteria of the school board, not a private operator. And the schools, Mr. Chairman, are Elmsdale, Chignecto Central Regional. That was at a cost of $16 million, which is financed through the Tangible Capital Assets Program. There is the Clare P-12 Southwest Regional, $11 million, and I believe the honourable member knows who represents Clare. There's the Argyle P-12 Southwest Regional, $19 million. St. Anne de Rousseau CSAP School, $11 million. Shedabacto Place Strait Regional Board, $3.9 million. The Waikagama Strait Regional, $18 million. The Pomket CSAP at $8 million. And those, Mr. Chairman, are all up and operating. There is the Shipyard Elementary, the Cape Breton Victoria Regional School Board, an amount of $7.8 million. That is now operating. There is, in January 2003, the Halifax North Mainland High School, the Halifax District School Board, an amount of $26 million. Under construction is the South Colchester High School, the Chignecto Central Regional School Board. That is $20 million, Mr. Chairman. Due to open in September of 2003 is the West Pictou High School, the Chignecto Central School Board, an amount of $22 million. There is the East Pictou High Chignecto Central School Board, an amount of $22 million. Those two schools will be open in September of 2003. There is, in September of 2004, the Truro Junior High, the Chignecto Central, that's $10.6 million. The Windsor Regional High School and the Annapolis Valley Regional School Board, an amount of $15.4 million, and I indicated those will be open in September of 2004. And under construction, there is the Amherst Elementary, there's the Cumberland Elementary, respectively, they are $10 and $8 million projects. The Rankin Cape Breton Victoria Regional, an amount of $6.2 million. The Shelburne Regional Southwest Regional Board, $18.9 million. The Sydney Elementary in Cape Breton, and that is an amount of $11.4 million. That's a total. About to begin. I'm sorry? The construction's about to begin. Yeah, the construction is about to begin on those last 5 projects that I identified. That is a total, Mr. Chairman, of 19 projects completed, started, or about to start, all financed under tangible capital assets of this government for an amount of $191 million, Mr. Chairman.
Like to recognize the member from Glace Bay. Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. The member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister mentioned the, and as he just outlined, the tangible capital assets program for building schools. So, I'd like to find out from the minister exactly how that method of financing works, and when a school is finally, under that program, when a school is finally paid in full under that program, Mr. Minister.
Direct that question to the Minister of Education.
I think it's 20.
Yeah.
The Minister of Education.
5% is what it is. 5% per year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Tangible Capital Assets Program is a program where the province is able to go to the market to obtain the funds that are required for the building of the schools, and those funds are amortized at the rate of 5% per annum for the particular projects in question.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
And again, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the minister when that would be paid. How many years are we talking about here?
With that question, I'll recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, as I indicated to the honourable member, if you take an amount of money and you amortize it at the rate of 5% per annum, then you can see how long it takes to go ahead and and complete the payment. But it's not a manner of financing that is different than the honourable member would use or other honourable members would use to finance their homes. You take out a mortgage in the value of the home, you retire the debt as you progress, and you treat your home as an asset, and as you pay it down, the value of the asset increases, and the value of your home increases as well. And of course, you would hope that it would appreciate in value throughout the course of owning the home. And that, of course, is an acceptable method of financing capital assets that are owned either by individuals or by people within the province. Because as you pay down the amount that was obtained from the market for that particular asset, then of course the asset increases in value, and it is something that belongs to all Nova Scotians at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Minister, recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And you know, when you're borrowing, you're adding to the debt, number one. Yes, for instance, I have a mortgage, but I know when that mortgage is going to be paid in full. I know the term of that mortgage. So you've listed to us 19 projects that are completed, started, or about to be started, at a total of $191 million. So take one of those schools, Mr. Minister. Give me an example. Take one of those schools. Tell me when it's paid in full under your plan.
The Minister of Education.
I didn't get his question. Anyway, I'll answer something.
Order, please. Order, please. The Minister has the floor.
It's, well, perhaps the honourable member would just repeat the question, then I could try to be more precise.
Thank you, Minister. I would ask the member from Glace Bay.
Repeat it 100 times if I could get an answer, Mr. Chair. But what I said is that if you take one of your 19 schools or projects that you announced as an example, and tell us exactly how long it's going to take to pay off that school in full.
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, the Minister of Finance, I believe, will be doing his estimates in the chamber, and you can ask of him how the province actually acquires the funds that are given to the Department of Education relative to this, because we do not go to the market for a particular school. For instance, we would not go to the market for the Waikagama School and obtain the funds for that particular school. We would go to the market based on the total capital needs of the province within a fiscal year, and the province goes to the market, and because they do it in a lump sum, taking all of the capital that is required, then we are able to, of course, to be much more competitive with respect to rates when it is done in that manner. And I'm sure that the Minister of Finance would be quite pleased to go through the details of how the Department of Finance goes to the market, and when they float their bonds with respect to obtaining funds for the capital needs of the province in any given fiscal year. Now, there is a fundamental difference, of course, in our method of financing the construction of schools relative to that which was pursued by the previous government in the P3 program. Because when we finish paying for the schools, we own the schools in their entirety. Under the P3 program, when the contract is concluded, you still don't own the school and must pay a sum in order to acquire that particular school. So while we have financial obligations with respect to our schools, the schools are assets that we have, and those schools have significant value to the province once they are paid for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister hasn't answered the question. And I would dare say it's because the minister doesn't know the answer to the question. And he refers me to the Minister of Finance. This is the Minister of Education who says he has a plan to build a whole bunch of new schools, and he can't tell this committee how they're paid for and how long it takes to pay off a school. Now, Mr. Minister, you should know that. You have your officials with you, and I'm sure they know, and they can whisper that answer in your ear.
Hiding behind Neil again.
Otherwise, you're just hiding behind the finance minister right now. I've asked you to take one of those schools, and you proudly stood up and listed 19 schools. And all of your colleagues stood up and cheered, but I don't hear them cheering now when you can't tell us how that's going to be paid for, Mr. Minister. Take one school as an example. I don't care what school it is, but you tell me how long it's going to take to pay for that school. And I'll ask the minister again, Mr. Chair. Give me an example. Give me a concrete example of how much it's going to cost over what term to pay that school off in full.
I would recognize the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, what is lacking here is an appreciation by the honourable member as to how the province conducts its finances. And I will attempt to explain that to him, Mr. Chairman. And
Order, please. Order, please. Order. Minister, you have the floor.
the honourable, no, I fear that the degree of complication is, and the problem of complication does not reside on this side of the House, it resides on that side of the House. And perhaps because they didn't understand that concept, Mr. Chairman, is the reason that they resorted to P3, because they could not figure out how to go to the market to borrow the funds required to look after the capital needs of the province. And that is what we do. And Mr. Chairman, we build roads. They're not going to build roads because they're not going to go to the market to get money. We build schools. They're not going to build schools because they're not going to go to the market to get money. We build other capital needs, such to serve the needs of education, to serve the needs of the Department of Justice, to serve the needs of transportation and public works. So all of those capital needs that the province has within a fiscal year need to be found in the market. Let me give you an example of why it's not appropriate to take a single school and break it down in terms of financing of that school. We build schools, Mr. Chairman, over a period of 3 to 4 years, depending upon the amount of planning that is required, depending upon the amount of residual work that is done once the essence of the building is completed. So if the school were a $20 million project, it may be that in the first year of that project you would only spend $1 million. So, Mr. Chairman, you would not go out to the market and borrow the full $20 million in the first year. And the same with a highway project that would take 3 years to build. You would not go to the market and borrow the $20 million for a highway project that you were going to finance over 3 years. You would go to the market and you would find the $1 million for the first year of construction of that school. If in the next phase you were going to spend $10 million, then of course you would go to the market in the next year and you would borrow $10 million. That's now a total of $11 million that you have invested in that school. So in the third year, you would go to the market again, and if you needed an additional $8 million, you would go to the market, get the $8 million. And in the last year, you would, from the market, get the remaining money that you needed for the building of that school. So, Mr. Chairman, the funds that are needed for the construction of the school are funds which are obtained as they are required in order to finance and pay for the building of the school. Now, that explains, I hope, to the honourable member why it is not appropriate to say why you can't identify with the single school, because it is lumped in with transportation, it is lumped in with the capital needs of health, it is lumped in with the capital needs of justice and other departments within government. So that is why I suggest to the honourable member that if he wants the details with respect to how this is done, he should get involved in the examination of the Minister of Finance's estimates, because I'm sure the Minister of Finance would provide even more detail than I have been able to this morning. But I hope that the honourable member now understands that you don't go out to the market and obtain the whole $20 million at the start of a project, but you do it in a phased manner, you do it responsibly as you need the funds. I hope the honourable member understands my explanation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Glace Bay.
There's quite a few things I understand, Mr. Chair. I understand the word borrow, and I know that the minister has said they're borrowing, and that they will continue to borrow to pay for schools, and that they have borrowed in the past, and they'll borrow again in the future, and they'll borrow and borrow and borrow the money. Despite the minister's arrogance, Mr. Chair. Despite that, I've asked a very simple question, Mr. Chair. A very simple question. I know, anybody in this chamber knows, that if they've taken out a mortgage, they know when it's going to be paid in full and how much it costs to pay that mortgage in full. Well, Mr. Minister, you're saying that you're taking out mortgages on 19 schools. Pick one and tell me how much it's going to cost over what period of time. That's a very simple couple of questions, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to recognize the Minister of Education. And the member from Glace Bay has 20 minutes left in turn while we're waiting for the Minister. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The honourable member believes that we do our own financing within education in order to build our schools. Now, the fact of the matter is, Mr. Chairman, that is done by finance. And it is done by finance within the context of the total capital requirements of the province from year to year. And as I indicated to the honourable member, that is accomplished by going to the market as the funds are required. Now, the honourable member must understand that if, as is suggested by the leader of his party, that they are not prepared to go to the market, then they should explain if, in fact, they are going to build schools. They should explain if, in fact, they're going to build roads. They should explain if, in fact, they're going to look after the capital needs of justice, of other government departments. Because if they are not going to the market, as their leader suggests they are not going to do, then either they are not going to build schools, they are not going to build roads, or their tax increase will be sufficient to pay for the $106 million that we're going to spend on roads and the $200 million that are going to be spent on schools. It's one thing or the other, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to recognize the member from Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've repeatedly asked the minister a question, a very simple question. The minister has done everything except give me an answer to the questions which I've asked time and time again to give me an example. And I didn't ask him to explain the process of the finance department. I asked him as the Minister of Education. He is the Minister of Education. Therefore, he should know without a doubt how a school is financed. And he should know how long it takes to pay for that school. That's all I've asked him. He has not given me an answer to that question. You're ducking it, Mr. Chair. That's what that minister is doing. So I'll move on to something that maybe he can give me an answer to. I'll give him a simple question, Mr. Chair. The maintenance of our schools, Mr. Minister. How much is deferred?
The Minister of Education. The Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, in 2000, there was an amount of about $500 million of deferred maintenance required. That, of course, would be a cumulative number that came to us as a result of the lack of maintenance that was done over the period of the 90s. And we, since that time, have invested $291 million toward that deferred maintenance cost. It continues to be a challenge, but we have plans to address it. We are working with our colleagues and partners in the school boards to address that. We are also very actively involved in seeking approaches that may not have been followed in the past in order to ensure that we continue to address that in an ongoing manner so that we do not develop deficiencies in the future.
The member from Glace Bay.
I feel we're on a roll here, Mr. Chair, so I'll continue with questions that perhaps can be answered. The minister, tell me, please, if indeed there have been any schools sold lately?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In the event that a school was built prior to 1983 and that school is no longer required, then the school is turned back to the municipal unit that would have been instrumental in the building of that school in the first place. And how the municipal unit decides to deal with that asset, of course, is their decision. Prior to 1983, those buildings, of course, were built by the municipal unit in which they were located. Thank you.
The member from Glace Bay.
I don't want to. I felt we were on a roll, so I'll ask it again. Have there been any schools sold lately?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much. The answer to the question is yes, Mr. Chairman. The details of the question, however, would have to be obtained from the municipal units that would have sold the schools, because they, in fact, prior to 1983, they built and owned the school. And following that, we, of course, wound up taking over the assets, but there was a recognition that it was an asset that was owned by the municipality. So when the school is no longer required by a school board, that was built prior to 83, it reverts back to the municipal unit, and they have the option of disposing of that asset in a manner which they deem appropriate.
The Glace Bay member.
So just that, and I understand many times during my questioning that the minister has pointed. I want to make perfectly sure that I'm understanding it, Mr. Minister. I wouldn't want to not understand what you're saying. So you haven't sold any schools. You give schools away, do you, to municipalities?
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, the schools we are referencing are schools that were built by the municipal units. They are schools that were owned by the municipal units. They are schools that were used by the school boards while they were under the ownership of the municipal units. They are schools which were deemed no longer necessary by the school boards, so those schools were vacated by the school boards and they continued to be owned by the municipal units. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The Glace Bay member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just looking for a clarification, that's all. The minister was kind enough to say that I could get a clarification. Perhaps I didn't understand that point. He's explained it to me perfectly. And I appreciate that kind of clarity, which we haven't seen until now on the other questions that I asked. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have remaining, please?
Honorable member, you have until 10:26.
Thank you very much. I wanted to revert back to a question
Order, please. The honorable member for Glace Bay does have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to revert back to a matter that I had brought up during the first of my time, and I wanted to as well end with that here again. But before I do, I know maybe it's just me, but I wanted to ask the minister. I know he referred to how many schools were sold. Was it after 1983? Was that the figure that was the date that was used? How many were sold prior to that? Is that prior to 83? So maybe I should ask the question. I didn't ask the question. Maybe I should have asked the question, how many were sold after 1983? Would that be a fair question to ask? Would it be okay with the other opposition members, Mr. Chair?
Order, please. Order, please. Honorable members are required to direct their questions and answers through the chair, the Honorable the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only school that I'm aware of, and we will check on this to make sure that I am accurate, but the only school that I'm aware of built since 1983 that is not now in use is the McDonald's School in Dominion. And that facility, of course, has we have not taken the action with respect to its future, but that's the only one, and obviously that's not a facility that would be of any resale value in its current state.
The member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the minister for the answer. And I would like to get back to a matter that we were discussing at the first of our conversation, and that being the priority list that is either compiled or is being compiled, I guess, by the cabinet. And again, I'd like to ask the minister perhaps if he could explain to us exactly what input he has into compiling that list as the Minister of Education in this province.
The Minister of Education.
There, just come on. I was waiting for my light to come on, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'll try to explain the process to the honourable member. The school boards compile their priority list. That list was considered by the committee, the capital committee that's reviewing the list. I made reference to that before. They have come forward. They've come forward with a list, and within the department, we have put that list together and bring it forward. And I'm involved in the discussions with members of the department. I seek their advice and give great value to the advice that I get from them. And that it is then considered based on my recommendation by cabinet. And of course, since there are significant dollars associated with it, then it requires some detailed consideration by the government and consideration by the Department of Finance, and that is where the projects are at this particular time.
The Glace Bay member.
So, Mr. Chair, the minister has explained that, and I'd like to know then, he has the final say? Is that what he is telling us, that as Minister of Education, you have the final say as to what lists or what schools remain on that list?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The list that would be announced by myself as the minister will be a list that would have been approved by the cabinet.
The Glace Bay member.
So if a school has been added to that list by a school board as a priority, and then has been determined by the Department of Education as a priority, and then has your check mark by it as a priority, that decision can still be overturned by the cabinet. Is that correct?
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The check mark is the easy part, putting the check mark by the items on the list. The challenge, of course, is to find the funds that match the dollars associated with the check mark. And that is a responsibility of all of the cabinet to be able to find that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The Glace Bay member.
Mr. Chair, I have to apologize in this instance because my earpiece went dead and I just didn't hear the answer. I apologize. Could I hear it again, please?
The Honourable Minister of Education, if he would repeat his response.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The honourable member was kind enough to repeat his questions to me on occasion, and I'll be doing my best to provide him with a repeat of the answer. What I said was that the check mark is the easy part of the process because that's where you say, yes, this is what we would like to do. We'd like to do this, this, and this. The challenge in the process, of course, is to find the dollars that go with the check marks as you start to add them up. And therein lies the challenge of Cabinet, and that is what is being addressed at the current time.
The Glace Bay MLA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must say, as was stated in public accounts the other day, yesterday, it's a pretty worrisome process when school boards in this province can identify priorities for their schools in their own districts and say this is the school that we need based on whether it's there's a problem with it, it's a sick school, as in the case with Barrington or whatever the case may be, and then have that list go to the Department of Education, move on to the Minister of Education, and then move on to the Cabinet in this province. And because perhaps a political decision will interfere, that school, the decision to put that school on the list, could disappear into thin air. It's a pretty sad process if that has the potential of happening. And let me tell you, Mr. Chair, the potential for that happening at this time right now in Nova Scotia is very great indeed. Because as we know, it's just around the corner. And we know that this group over here, as they've done many, many times before, will play politics with a lot of things. And schools are going to be one of them, Mr. Chair. Schools will be one of them. You can bet your bottom dollar that within the next few weeks, the school construction announcements will be coming out of nowhere. And the minister will be crisscrossing, I hope, the province to make these announcements. Here's a new school. Here's a new school that actually won't start being built until 3 years down the road, but we're announcing it now because this is election time. This is election time. Now, I'd also like to explain to the minister, who was very kind to explain to me about the process, how you finance a school. But, you know, I still feel, Mr. Chair, that the Minister of Education should have been able to explain and be able to tell us when each school will be paid off. That Minister of Education should know that. There is an amortization schedule for each project. The minister should be able to get it. The money for a school is borrowed up front and spent in full during construction. That's another fact. The amortization is what shows up on the bottom line, Mr. Chair, and amortization is how you account for it. You think about it for a minute. It's like saying that you had a mortgage, but you don't borrow a portion of the mortgage each year. You borrow the full amount. You borrow the full amount. Now, Mr. Chair, having said that, I know I don't have much time remaining. I think you told me my time expired at approximately 10:26. So in closing, I know that there are going to be other members of my caucus who are going to be asking questions of the Minister of Education. And I know, Mr. Chair, how serious a problem it is in terms of school construction and school maintenance in this province. And I know, Mr. Chair, that indeed it is a question of the need. I think that should be placed first before anything else, Mr. Minister. I hope that politics will not play a part in any decision that is being made on behalf of our children in this province, because what else can be any more important than the education of our children, Mr. Chair? So in closing, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for the time to ask the Minister the questions. I'd like to thank the Minister for his participation as well. And having said that, I will now take my seat. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you. And in spite of that last hour, let's turn to something of specifics. And I know we had a topic of pilots, and I want the Deputy Minister to know that information. I appreciate the travel. But I'm going to talk the real pilots in education, because that is a concern I want you to address. Particularly, I want the Minister to know that I've heard from teachers on numerous occasions that they consider pilot projects to be stall tactics in many ways. Pilot projects, when it comes to looking at a particular issue in education, well, let's have a pilot project on that at a cost of whatever. So I'd like the Minister, if he could clarify for me, perhaps with some detail if available, the number of current pilot projects underway in the department and in what specialty areas?
The Minister of Education.
Mr. Chairman, thank the honourable member for the question, and Mr. Chairman, I will take that as notice, and I will respond to the honourable member. And the reason for going through my papers is because I have responses from previous questions that he asked on a previous day that I will lay on the table, which I forgot to do when he was up previously. We'll take that question as notice and provide you with as much detail as we can. Thank you.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple of pilots that I would like to discuss, pilot projects specifically. I would like to look at specifically at the Special Education Implementation Review Committee and the recommendation that there be pilot projects. Now, in the information that was sent out to boards for applications, it was said that these pilot projects will address the gaps in current delivery services. That's a quote, Mr. Chair, that the applications, the pilot projects will address gaps in current delivery services. The concern that I have, and it's a concern that I've heard from parents involved in this process, is why do we need a pilot project when it comes to this particular review committee when the gaps are caused by a very obvious problem, a shortage of qualified professionals?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The very last part of your question, I wonder if the honourable member would mind repeating that. I got the first part of it, just the last part.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
The concern is brought to my attention by parents with regards to the need to actually have a pilot project when looking at this review committee, when the obvious gap that is caused, it's caused in the special education delivery to students because there's a shortage of qualified professionals. There's a shortage of qualified people actually in the classrooms, in the learning centers, in the areas where we have one-on-one with students. Why do we have to have pilot projects when it comes to this issue when we know what the problem already is?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I can indicate to the honourable member that indeed we do have to find additional qualified personnel to address special needs within our schools, and we are providing funding in the current budget in order to begin addressing that. But in my view, it does not preclude us from taking measures to try to find some innovative ways to address the problems that we have while we go out and seek the additional personnel that are required to deal with these problems. So I don't see it as a process that would take place in isolation, but it is part of a whole strategy that we need to employ in order to move forward in addressing these concerns.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Special Education Committee has said that they consulted parents about these pilot projects, that parents and teachers were consulted. Yet, from the information that has been given to me, Ann Power of your department could not provide the names of the parents that had been consulted on the need for these pilot projects. So I would say that we have a problem of communication here, not to get into Paul Newman's classic movie, but I am dealing with parents who are saying a pilot project when it comes to the Special Education Implementation Review Committee is nothing more than one of these other stall tactics, and that's the reputation that pilot projects have in the Department of Education. Many parents know the issue, many teachers know the issue, school administrators know the issue, but when it comes to a pilot project on this very important topic, it is a stall tactic by the department. When we already know the problem, parents say they were not consulted on the need for pilot projects. And I wonder if the minister could comment so I can return that comment to the parents who've made that comment to me in return of what you're going to say now.
The Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The pilot projects are only a piece of the strategy that's required to address this very important problem and challenge that faces us. And we certainly do not present the pilot projects as the be-all and the end-all. They're only a piece of the strategy that we require. As I indicated previously, a major element of that is to obtain the additional resources within our schools that are needed in order to address these problems. So I do not see a conflict with respect to finding best practices through pilot projects and learning new initiatives or new approaches as being contrary to the long-term objective. I see it as playing an integral part of that long-term objective, and we certainly I don't disagree with the honourable member that we can in fact identify a lot of the problems, but we do need the resources to be able to diagnose a lot of problems, and that's where we need the additional resources. But in terms of addressing the problems relative to the diagnosis that are performed, it is appropriate for us to find best practices that work with respect to addressing these problems. So now, with respect to the issue of consultation, I'm I don't have with me the details that the honourable member is seeking, except to say this, that, you know, consultation is a very difficult term to sort of recognize, if I could phrase it that way. Certainly, if you come to me with a problem and I am able to respond in completely to the suggestion that you have made to me with respect to the problem, then you would probably go away and say that you were consulted. If you come to me with a problem and others also present the problem, and I respond in a way that doesn't address it precisely as you suggested it should be addressed, then you would say, perhaps characterize it as not being a good consultation, but you might agree to the fact that there was consultation. If I'm not able to respond in a manner that you deem appropriate, then you would probably characterize the process as a process that lacked consultation. So it's one that's very difficult to agree upon, and it depends very much on your perspective as to whether or not you feel there has been an adequate level of consultation occur.
The member for Kimberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and your comments about consultation are well put, and I concur. I'm on the topic of pilot projects because of a particular item that I brought to members' attention on a day previous when, and I know I'm not allowed props, and I can't lose this copy of this particular textbook, Mr. Chair, so I'll keep it down here. It's called Drawing the Line, a resource for the prevention of problem gambling. And I know the minister is aware of this, and he has sent me a note over to follow up. Here's a pilot project that was used, and for the record, I want to again highlight the schools that it was used in, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Order, please. I would just advise the member and not caution him that using a text in budget debate is permitted. If the member reads extensively from any transcript, he may be required, most likely will be, to table it, but the honourable member has a document there. He can use it. I don't think it would necessarily be considered a prop unless he illustrates in such a way.
The concern I have, Mr. Chair, and I think you know where I'm coming from, unless I get this a lot closer to the one good eye that I have, I'll never be able to read it. So I'm not going to wave it around like the New York Times, I promised the minister. So let's have a look here. This is from Drawing the Line, which was a pilot for grades 4 to 6 for curriculum supplement, a resource for the prevention of problem gambling. And it was used in these schools: Brookfield Memorial School, Inglis Street School, Cox Heath Elementary, the Upper Stewiacke Elementary School, the Somerset and District Elementary School down in the Annapolis Valley. It was used in Mulgrave Memorial Education Center for the Straight Board, and Hebville Academy. Now, this pilot project obviously involved teacher training. It obviously involved, from my perspective as a school administrator, a rather delicate topic to be using, in my view again, Mr. Chair, for students from grades 4, 5, and 6. Now, based upon the experience of the pilot and the fact that these teachers were trained, could the minister inform the House what are the plans of the department to use this book extensively, to have it become part of the curriculum? Because that's what happens when pilots are involved. You know, they're announced with a splash, and sometimes in certain situations for other reasons, Mr. Chair. But here we are, we have had a pilot project on the topic of gambling, and now we have teachers trained. So I'd like the minister to inform me exactly where are we going with this particular workbook and this particular piece of curriculum. Because, and if I may, if I give the minister a moment to consider his answer, Yeah, and in time previous, the minister said something very, very applicable. And as a school teacher, I know we agree on this, that school teachers are often called upon to do many things outside of for which we were trained. And I can use an example for you, Mr. Chair. I graduated with a history degree and a minor in football, but we won't go there. I graduated with a history degree. Yet, during one of the years that I taught school, I was called upon to be involved in a project in sex education. Now, Mr. Chair, let's be clear. And I am not making the comment the member from Halifax-Shabukta who just said that's a topic I know nothing about. However,
The member shouldn't be swayed by rabbit tracks.
Although that was more of a bear track. Mr. Chair, let's be clear on this, okay? Why are we as educators, in the midst of all of the demands that are made upon us, why are we dealing with such issues? Why are we taking the time out of the preparation during the day when there's emphasis upon mathematics, when there's emphasis upon reading skills, to be dealing with such things as a pilot project or teaching this particular topic of gambling, or the other topic which I mentioned earlier? So I know that the minister has said this prior, that sometimes there's so many other things that teachers are called upon to do when it comes to curriculum development. So I'd like to know, where are we going with this gambling pilot project? Is this going to become part of the curriculum for grades 4 to 6? Or heaven forbid, if I may editorialize, I hope it's not part of the curriculum in the schools in my community, because in my view, this has no place in the school system. However, Mr. Minister, if you would comment, please.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the honourable member for raising the issue. And indeed, I believe we do share a concern with respect to how much we are expecting of our schools and how much we're expecting of the teachers in our schools relative to their training and their capacity to be able to deal with certain topics and subjects. And that is why, with respect to this particular resource, that there was a training program put in place for the teachers who were using the program in the project. And while I share the honourable member's concern with respect to what our teachers are being asked to do, I do believe that we, as part of our education, must not put our heads in the sand with respect to those items to which our students are exposed within our society, and that we do indeed have to be able to have some capacity to respond to that exposure that students have. And there's I want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm distinguishing between exposing our students to elements that are a reality of our society and asking our teachers to take remedial action relative to people who have problems or who develop problems relative to things that exist within our society. So I believe that there's a fundamental difference between exposure of students to realities of our society and of expecting teachers to take remedial action relative to problems that individual students might develop with respect to issues that are out there. So, and I want to say to the honourable member that this particular resource was made available to teachers. It was and is part of attempting to have students understand the reality of a phenomena within our society, and to do it in a way, hopefully, that the students will be able to make some good judgments with respect to the subject matter at hand. And that is the intent of this particular pilot. And I want to say that in no way is it in an attempt to get involved with the actual treatment of any problems or difficulties that students may have. And however, I do suspect that where the honourable member is going with this, and that his concern is that by talking about it, we're somehow leading students in that particular direction. And we may have, while I haven't heard him completely articulate his position with respect to that, we may have some fundamental difference of opinion relative to that.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
If I may continue with the topic of pilots, and I attended a news conference at Hants West High School, dear old Hants West, and at that time there was a pilot announced. Part of it was in the Valley, involving at-risk students and the difficulties, particularly in areas such as the Windsor area, and there are risk students everywhere, of course. And that particular pilot project was one that I was interested to see if the minister could report to the House. The previous minister announced it at that time. There were some support people there. In fact, Mr. Gunn was there from the board and was supportive of the project. And since I am a classmate of Mr. Gunn, and it is an issue that, of course, we have to be dealing with constantly in the school system, I was wondering if the minister could report to me on the progress of that particular pilot, not necessarily just in the Windsor school situation, but that particular pilot of dealing with at-risk students.
The Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would, if with the indulgence of the honourable member, I would prefer to take the option of perhaps obtaining a detailed response to the honourable member rather than just going on a few scattered concepts or ideas that I have with respect to what has been accomplished, and we'll be very happy to do that, and we'll do it as quickly as we can. Thank you.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
On that topic, I want the record to show very clearly that in spite of the fact of the comments that I make about the role of pilot projects in the education system, when somebody on the ground or in the trenches or whatever the appropriate expression is, such as Jimmy Gunn says that's a pilot project which I think could have some merit, I perhaps would look at that with a different attitude than other pilot projects that I would consider in the stall mode. However, in this, and again, although I know I can get other copies of this, Mr. Chair, in this Learning for Life document, there is a mention on page 8 of 8 active school community pilots. And this is an issue which is, of course, a real concern for the community that I represent. It says, and I'm not going to read from it extensively, Mr. Chair, the pilots will test a comprehensive program to promote daily physical activity, including after-school programs, community events, and extracurricular activities. Okay? End of quoting from the source, I assure you, Mr. Chair, so I don't lose my book here. This is, of course, from Learning for Life. I was wondering if the minister could report to me the 8 active school community pilots, where they are, what is the status of those pilots, and I guess more importantly, if one of those pilots is still available for a bidding order, if the member from Timberley Prospect could have a community involved in one of those pilot projects. So here's a pilot project which looks at issues of real relevance in the growing community. particularly when it comes to the fact, and I know the chair has heard me say this on many occasions, our schools sit closed so often, and they're so difficult to get into, and they're so costly to get into, but particularly when it comes to a certain type of school, but I don't want to go there. Okay, I'm more concerned about the fact here's another pilot project which was announced by the previous minister, and is this a pilot project that the current minister can report to me about?
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the honourable member for the question. The pilot involves the 7 school boards in the first year. The Southwest Regional School Board will have 2 schools, 1 in each of the district boards, and a 9th school has been added to include the Mi'kmaq community. And each school has gathered an action team to develop a plan, and most are beginning implementation. For most boards, the plan will expand about halfway through the project to include the family of schools in which the original pilot project resides. So it's something that will expand, and in a sense, it becomes much more than a pilot at that particular juncture. In many cases, the family of schools will include 1 high school, a couple of junior highs, and several elementary schools. And in Kingston, it will include Kingston Elementary School and its family, the Pine Ridge Middle School. Some of the pilot schools are quite advanced in the activities and the partnerships already underway, while others are starting from ground zero. The Kingston School are fairly advanced and will therefore begin with the family of schools, not just 1 school. And that pilot, of course, is in conjunction with the Department of Culture and Recreation. And I can, through the kindness of the Minister of Tourism and Culture, provide you with a complete list of the schools. And the one is Evelyn Richardson School, that is in the municipality of the District of Barrington. There is the Kingston Elementary, Pine Ridge Middle School, municipality of the County of Kings in the village of Kingston. The J.L. Ilsley High School, the Halifax Regional Municipality. The Hebville Academic, municipality of the County of Lunenburg. The Hants North Feeder Schools, the municipality of East Hants. The Cusack Cornwallis School, Kibriton Regional Municipality. East Antigonish Academy, municipality of the County of Antigonish. Cole Stella Maris, a municipality of Clare, and the Wakaba First Nation Secondary School. And these are the schools that are involved. And if the honourable member would like a copy of that, I'd be quite happy to provide it to him.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the minister for the thorough answer. I also look forward to the fact that when it comes, and I will take you on the offer of that note if I could at your convenience, please. I also looking forward to the results of those pilot projects in terms of making sure that we have feedback to members of the legislature and members in that area, those areas mentioned in particular. There's a concern that we can talk about in terms of pilot projects again, and you know, this is an important issue when I look at the growth in the community that I represent. At Ridgecliff Middle School, there is a teen health center. A teen health center that is playing a more and more prominent role in the growth of the community and the awareness of young people who attend that school. This teen health center is a model for many other schools to follow. And I'm aware of the fact that the guidance counselor at Ridgecliff is on one of the provincial committees which is reviewing the trend, if that's the way we could look at it, the necessity to have teen health centers in middle and junior high schools in particular. Because what I would like the minister to comment upon is whether he's supportive of this trend, if that's an appropriate term, because teen health centers cannot just be in high schools. Teen health centers in high schools are serving a different need than teen health centers in junior high and in the middle schools. That is where they are crucial. And I can tell you that the Teen Health Center at Ridgecliff Middle School in the community of Beachville, which services the communities of Beachville, Lakeside, and Timberley, is one of the focal points of that school. I'm wondering if the minister could report on whether this is the example that could be followed in other areas, and whether this is the sort of trend, and maybe that's the inappropriate word, Mr. Minister, but this is the sort of trend that you are supportive of.
The Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And indeed, I'm glad the honourable member brought this topic forward. It is something that we do support. I can recall many times when being in a school where the capacity to be able to deal with health-related issues in the school was not always you were not always in the best circumstance relative to that. So we do indeed support the concept. They play an important role in health promotion and in the overall well-being of teens. There are 23 youth teen health centers operating throughout Nova Scotia, and they provide a range of health supports and services to youth, such as health education, health promotion, information and referral, and follow-up and support. And the Department of Health, through the Office of Health Promotion, is conducting a three-part evaluation of the youth health centers. The phase 1 and 2, which is completed report, focuses on the structure and the operation of the centers, including startup, location, age, activities, human resources, financial characteristics, and governance. And I can also indicate, Mr. Chairman, that we're probably dealing with a situation of a program that is a very good program, which we want to continue to expand through the Department of Health promotions in our schools. And if I might, Mr. Chairman, point out to the honourable member that is likely something that got started as a pilot project.
The member for Timberley Prospect.
I particularly would like to draw attention to Ms. Graham Nigel, who's a part of that, and I understand the role of pilot projects for sure. The concern I want to make evident again, and I'm glad to see there are 23 of them around the province, more particularly, how many of them are in junior high or middle school? That's where I'm coming from with this particular issue, because I'm not looking at the high school and the fact that we should be reducing having teen health centers in high schools. But I'm very concerned about the fact of the availability for teen health centers in middle schools, junior high schools. Because I want the minister to know that I spent many years as a high school teacher and vice principal and principal. And when I took the career move and went to junior high, many of my colleagues looked at me and said, "Are you crazy, Bill? What are you going to junior high for?" Now, there's no more challenging area than to deal with grade 8 students. And let me tell you, junior high teachers earn their stripes. The concern that I have for the issue is that teen health centers in junior highs are crucial. They're needed in junior high schools or middle schools. The junior high, which I had the privilege of working in before I was fortunate enough to get elected as the member from Timberley Prospect, did not have a teen health center. Ridgecliff has a teen health center. So I want to come back to this issue. The concern I have is how many of those 23, and if you can't tell me right here, I understand that, how many of those 23 are in junior high or middle schools? Because that's where the emphasis must be.
The Honourable the Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I can indicate to the honourable member that first of all, we will provide you with a complete list of where these centres are located. But I can say that some of them are in 7 to 12 schools. We are doing, as part of the ongoing process, we're doing an evaluation of these centres, and that evaluation, I believe, will assist us concluding where we need to proceed next with respect to this program. And it is an evaluation that will be done, of course, in consultation with my colleagues' department in health promotion.